This morning's program with yoga chanting. This is being done courtesy the Yoga Mandiram Chennai, a very well-known yoga institute run by Sri Desikacharya and his family. Today his wife, Mrs. Desikacharya, and one of our own children, Jyotsna Narayanan, who took the yoga this morning, are going to begin the morning with yoga chanting.
Good morning. We will begin each session with a little chanting from our ancient tradition. Today, the chant that has been chosen speaks of the very beautiful relationship between a teacher and a student. We'll request all of you to please follow us and repeat the chant with us to give us a sense of togetherness. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you.
Please feel free to repeat after us.
Sadhana avatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Adhitamastu Mavid Visha Vahai Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
We'd like to take a moment to just go over the meaning of this chant so it makes a little more, it's more meaningful to us. Menaka will chant the line and I'll give you a brief meaning in English.
Sahana vavatu.
The process of learning, of education, is often full of obstacles and sometimes difficulties. This line requests that the teacher and the student both be protected, that they may be able to follow this journey without these hindrances.
Sahanau bhunaktu.
Let this whole journey of education be one of great joy for both the teacher and the student.
Tejasvinavadhitamastu. Sorry, I made a mistake. Sahaviryam karavavahai.
Following the path of learning requires strength and vitality. Let both of us, the teacher and the taught, be blessed with this vitality.
Tejasvinavadhitamastu.
And as we walk this path, let it give us more and more clarity. Let it bring to us more and more light.
Ma vidvishavahai.
At no point in this journey together let there ever be animosity, enmity between the teacher and the student. Let there never be hatred. Let this be a journey of great warmth and friendliness.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Let there be peace in the mind of the student and the teacher. Let us not be affected even by ourselves, by our environment, or even by things beyond our control. Can we invite you please to repeat just the last line and request for peace? Thank you.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Morning. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Cheryl Ferreira. I'm an AMI trainer, originally from Bombay, trained in India, now working in London. You will be seeing a lot of me over these 3 days as I try and guide us through this process of the beginnings of our sadhana. I want to begin this morning with a few very simple announcements. To begin with, my very first announcement is that I would like to publicly, very profoundly, very sincerely apologize to all of you in our audience for yesterday's problems with the technology. As you know, because of technology problems, we could not hear properly, and our PowerPoints did not really work as they should, some of them. And in that connection, I have very sincere, very humble apologies to offer to Dr. Silvana Montanaro Kotroki on behalf of the Congress Committee. We sincerely apologize that our lack of technical coordination affected your speech. Please accept our apologies. To continue, a few simple housekeeping announcements. This institute, Kalakshetra, has a historical tradition of no photography, no recording of any kind in the auditorium. So I have a request, all of us, could we please put our cameras or phones or anything else that's a recorder off and respect the traditions of this place. So please do not take photographs. Please do not in any way record the proceedings during these 3 days. In preparation for the journey into sadhana, I also request that we find in ourselves the discipline to turn our mobile phones off. We may turn them on outside the auditorium. You may speak to people outside when you are on breaks or out of sessions. But during the sessions, let us try and remember that until a few years ago, the mobile phone did not exist. And if we did not speak to somebody for 3 hours, the world did not come to an end. And try and keep those phones off. Our young volunteers have been given instructions to help you remember. And if by chance you forget, you might find somebody gently reminding you. Please don't take offense. Another announcement. You will find that after every speaking session, after every presentation, there are times to have a break. During the break, there might be tea or coffee or lunch, but there's ample time for you to explore this beautiful campus. You have such a wonderful opportunity. You could explore the ancient banyan tree, which hosts the yoga every morning. You could also approach the lovely Dastakar Trade Fair, which has come all the way from many different parts of India to be with you, to offer you an insight into Indian traditions. Please ask the volunteers to help you find places. They've really tried to understand this campus. It would be nice that they use all the knowledge they've gained during this preparation time. Please also ask the volunteers to help you find the 4 different facilities, toilet facilities that are available in various parts of this campus that we are using, so that we don't all congregate at the one place and find that we are getting rather uncomfortable as we wait. Thank you. Now on to the actual proceedings. It is my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, who leads us into this sadhana, Mrs. Lynn Lawrence. Lynn Lawrence is currently holding 2 very important positions. She is the Executive Director of the Association Montessori International, with its headquarters in Holland. And she also is Director of Training and Schools at the Maria Montessori Training Organization in London. As part of her duties as being Executive Director, she guides us as the AMI family into a wonderful future. And as part of her duties in London, she guides the school and the teaching institute. So she has a lot of experience in Montessori. Lynn also brings with her to this job years of experience with Help the Children projects in Africa. Please welcome Lynn Lawrence.
Vanakkam. I am, first of all, going to ask you if you can all hear me, especially at the back. Is it possible? Thank you. I am, of course, very honored to have been invited to give the first talk this morning. And I hope that it was not presumptuous in this esteemed setting to have called it the dance of life. For dance is, as I understand it, to move oneself rhythmically in time to music, creating a harmonious integration of self with the complex and changing rhythms of the musical environment that surrounds the dancer. In this process, an integration takes place between dancer and musician, an integration that combines the self-expression through movement of the dancer with the self-expression through movement of the creator of the music. And as each one expresses themselves, they in turn influence one another until these 2 initially individual forms of expression combine and harmonize to create something that neither could have achieved alone. The work of the dance and the dancer is to aim at the perfection of each step. Each movement, whether it be the expressive use of the hand, a particular angle of the body, the tilt of the head, or the precise placement of the foot. Each of those movements the dancer aims to perfect, until, with practice, each step builds into a choreographed whole. And once the dancer has adapted and harmonized his or her body to one form of musical expression, there will be the possibility of adapting it to another, played with different rhythms, different styles, or different instruments. Dr. Montessori said in 1946, "The perfection of movement is spiritual. It is something which helps the development of the whole personality." Now, if we use the analogy of the dance, we could say that the individual task of a human being is to construct themselves step by step, to move rhythmically and harmoniously and ever more perfectly with what could perhaps be called the music of life. This music of life then synchronizes with the symphony of our universe. And what do we mean by the symphony of our universe? To paraphrase Stephen Rose, the neurobiologist, the sheer scale, diversity, and volume of life on Earth surpasses the imagination. The smallest, if you can imagine this with me, the smallest independently living organisms, are you with me? Right? The smallest independently living organisms are no more than 0.2 micrometers. That is 1/5 of a millionth of a meter in diameter. Are you with me? I'm not with me. I cannot imagine anything living that could be that small. I can't imagine that small, so it's great that you can. So we have an idea of how small that is. The largest living animal, the blue whale, can grow to more than 30 meters in length and may weigh 2,000 tons. Heavier than any known extinct dinosaur. It is possible, and here I need your imaginations again, it is possible that there are as many as 10,000 species of bacterium in a single gram of soil. So far, only about 3,000 of them have been named, so we still have work to do. Each creature alive, each creature making their individual and collective ways in the world, cooperating, competing, avoiding, living with, living off, interdependent, all participating in a vast and seemingly choreographed whole. For every single organism, a lifeline, its own unique trajectory in time and space from birth to death. Dr. Montessori said, if you have a vision of the cosmic purpose that every life in the world is based on movement with a purpose, you will be able to understand and direct the child's work better. But what is the child's work? And what is it that we must understand, if we at least understand that they must have movement with a purpose? We need to address this question because we adults have the capacity to help, but also hinder the process. We must come to understand that children have within them the power of their own self-construction. And therefore, their work is the work of building a human being adapted to their time and place. Now, I'm going to repeat that because I think it's very difficult for us to have this. To have the understanding that children have within them the power of their own self-construction. If we really believe that the human being is placed on this earth with all that they need to make themselves into a human being, if we really believe that, in other words, if we have a faith in that, because it's not always evident, is it? Right? If we really believe that, it changes forever our relationship with the child. It changes forever our position as an educator who has the privilege to be working with particularly the young child, but of course with all children. Again, Montessori said, the child's work is to fashion a human being in the fullness of his strength. By the time the adult exists, the child has vanished. So the whole life of the child is an advance towards perfection, towards a greater completeness. No one can do for the child the work that he has to do, to build the man he is making. The child, she says, enjoys doing the work needed to complete himself. His life is one in which work, and of course we mean the work of building himself, in which work is joy and happiness. So, in understanding that our work can only be to help the child do their work, our work can never be to try to do the work that the child needs to do. If we do the work that the child needs to do, we don't help, but we hinder. We know that if children are allowed to do this work in a supportive environment, they become a positive, constructive factor in the building up of society. That they have a contribution to make to society. They have a work to do that is as serious and important as any adult. Now, I'd like to put to you that we like to think that we believe that, but I think it's something we struggle with all the time. No matter how much we believe it, to translate that belief into action on behalf of the child is something that we have to constantly be asking ourselves if we are really doing. So, to go back to Montessori's quote, she says, if no one can do for the child the work that the child has to do, then what is it that we can do? Well, the first thing we can do is to understand that the child has creative energies, to learn to look for them, to observe them, and to see how, by responding to them, we can help the child to begin to fulfill the potential that lies within them. We also need to be sure that in what we offer the child, in the activities that we offer, in the framework, the ambience in which this child finds themselves, there is the possibility of assisting the development and the strengthening of their character. For education that we provide is not just about intellectual learning, but about the development of the whole human being. And in doing that, we need to help them to come to a more accurate understanding of who they are, what they are capable of, and what it is that is likely to give them fulfillment. We need to recognize and promote the development of the whole child, providing activities that not only develop the intellect, but also ensure that the human qualities of empathy, compassion, intuition, creativity, concentration, confidence, and kindness have an opportunity to flourish and to be seen and to be active. We need to be sure that we help the child to connect with the material world around them, embedding themselves directly within that world, so that the self and the world are intimately connected. And lastly, I suggest that we need to be sure that the education we offer them is an expression of affection for children, for young people who need to feel welcomed into society, who need to feel unreservedly that they have a place within it from the very beginning of their life. That emotional expression of affection, as you know very well, is not about being loved or needing to be liked. It is about the relationship human beings have with one another. It is about humanity. It is about warmth and humor. It is about connecting with the child, because whatever it is that you may have to offer that child, at whatever level, it is nothing without your humanity. It simply becomes an activity. Interesting, I'm sure, but missing an essential ingredient if all you do is operate it. Now, I know that many of you are told and believe, and as do I, that we do not put ourselves between the child and the material. Of course we don't. But what we are offering to the child is a chance to get to know, to explore, and to understand that which human beings have used and will continue to use to develop and understand the world around them. And so we need to be sure that in our attempt at objectivity, we don't offer it without the humanity that comes with it. You know that Montessori said education was an aid to life. And if you agree with that statement, then you need to be in a constant state of alertness, watching out for those guiding principles of life. You need to understand the wisdom of the natural guides that are within all children, and learn to understand their purpose and what it is that adults can do to work alongside them, so that you have a chance to help the child to release the tremendous creative potential that they have. Now, you know, what are those natural guides? Again, I'm talking to you and you know what they are, but to name a few. The child, as you know, is orientating themselves all the time. They're orientating themselves inwardly. Who am I? What can I do? What are my thoughts and my feelings? They're orientating themselves to the outside world. How do I fit? Where do I belong? What do I know? How do these things organize themselves? Does this have any relation to me? And in doing that, they are constantly organizing, classifying, ordering, searching for meaning, trying to put some kind of understanding that will allow them some independence of action and thought within the world. They are exploring, communicating. All of these things we know are there, waiting for an environment that will allow them to use them. So how are we going to do it? Well, the child has the world, and that they will be a part of. Our task is to give them activities that will help them to better understand it, better understand themselves, and better explore it. And so the activities that we choose must be taken from the world around them and made explorable and tangible for the child to come into direct contact with them. You know that the very young child, from the very beginning, seeks to imitate whatever it is that they find around them in the environment. They are only interested in becoming like you. And they will do everything that they can to imitate and reflect on that environment as best they can. And so the first set of activities that we're going to give children are the activities that help them to become a part of that environment. Now, you know and I know that if you offer a child the choice, and I'm talking of children, say, between 3 and 6 years here, the choice between a real knife that cuts real things and a pretend knife that divides some wooden structure in half, which is kept together by Velcro. Yes, you know the kind of things I mean that are available for children, yeah? If you offer a child the real knife on the one side and the pretend play knife on the other, which of those two is that child going to go for? And it would be a great experiment to do, wouldn't it, to see how many children would reach for the thing that they had seen being used in their environment that allowed them to feel that they were beginning to take part in the life that was around them. And so, watching children and knowing that this is what they need to do, we invented something to give them an opportunity to do exactly that, to practice the real things in the environment that they have, so that they were able then to take part in life. And you know that Montessori called these practical life activities. Now, I worry a little bit about that term, because quite often I visit schools and I wouldn't say that what I saw was actually practical life, a bit more of a still life, really. Practical life is really looking at activities that will help the child build for themselves a persona in a practical way, out of the things that are simply available, the things that are around, the things that they themselves know very well and really need to understand and do. And so we need to be sure that these practical life activities are really activities for building myself that are of a practical nature, not things that have sat for 1, 2, 3, dare I say 10, 12, surely not 15 years in the same place with the same items, never changing, no seasonal response. Of course, no one has practical life activities that are those. These activities need to look at the child and say, what does this child need to do? They need to take care of themselves. They're dying to do it. How can we help them do things that allow them to take care of themselves? And that's a question we should be asking from birth all the way through to adulthood. What is it that helps these children take care of themselves? And the answer to that question is the answer to what you will have in your practical life, depending on the age of the child. What does this child need to take care of themselves? The second question you need to ask, what does this child need to learn to take care of this beautiful, precious, vibrant, full, living environment? What is it? And the answer to that question will dictate what it is that you think you can help them to encounter. You will also ask yourself, what is it that this child needs to encounter that will help them to live well with others? And the answer to that question should give you an idea as to what it is you will help them to explore and experience while they are in your environment. Now, I would like to suggest that many people do not ask that question, or those three questions. What happens is that we take what was given in our courses and we reproduce them on the shelves, and pretty much that's what the children get. Montessori said, it's not my method, it's the children's method. What do you think she meant by that? She meant, I am taking my cue from what the children need. The only way that you will respond to them is if you take your cue from them too. Now, that is not to say that the things that are on our shelves in training centers aren't useful. I'm not suggesting that for one moment. But never should you be in the position of simply replicating what you were told without thinking about why you're doing it or what purpose it may serve. Because if you stop asking you those questions, it means you have stopped looking at the child freshly, and you are assuming that the children and the environment are the same as they were and always will be. Now, maybe the answer to that is that yes, the children are the same and the environment is the same as it will be, but you don't know if you don't ask. And you don't ask yourself enough, you don't actually think carefully enough. So we need to change our presence, our thinking presence with the child, in order to be sure that we are really responding as we should. From the adult point of view, these activities of practical life, and I can see some of you who don't know what I'm talking about already glazing over, these activities of practical life are probably the hardest ones for anyone to ever understand. And they are certainly the hardest to explain to parents. Would you agree with me? Right. Because parents are horrified to think that they should be bringing their child to this place of expertise, and the place of expertise is expecting that the child will sweep the leaves up from outside and dig the garden, and as some irate parent once said, polish the directress's silver. And yet, they are in fact probably the most important and most profound activities that you can offer the child. Too often, we are very guilty of giving the practical life activities to the untrained assistant. Because after all, it is only, for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, pouring from one jug to another, scrubbing a table, learning to do your buttons up, making sure that there's no dust, because no one can afford a cleaner, right? Making sure there's no dust on any of the shelves, learning to see if you can actually, by the way, teach another child, because that gives the teacher about 10 minutes break. So all of these things are what we call practical life activities. No, it's much easier to give those to somebody else and to concentrate our expertise on the intellectual abilities of reading, writing, and arithmetic. Because, after all, it's a welcome moment when the child finally gets around to doing something productive and useful for the future. We also know that the parents think that the writing and reading and arithmetic is very productive for the future. And we sometimes don't want to face the parent who says, well, why isn't my child reading or writing? They've told me that they've been polishing a camel every day for the last 3 months. Are they just telling me something that, in a polite way, not to keep asking, which of course I reckon they are? Or is there really a camel in this environment that my children are polishing? Well, of course, if there is a beautiful silver or brass or wooden camel, it could possibly be that the child is taking care of that small item in the environment. And how do you explain to a parent that a child who spontaneously looks around at the natural, beautiful resources of their environment, and they agree, by the way, that's an agreement, it's not an argument. How can you explain to a parent that this is a child who is reaching out to show that they care about their environment? That the wooden or silver or brass or glass camel is something they want to take care of. And in taking care of it, they preserve the resource in its beautiful and original form, not just for themselves, but for all of the other people who share the environment now and who may come in the future. Montessori's vision of the child taking care of their environment is so resonant today when we have a throwaway, don't care, disposable inheritance to get over. These children maintain and care because they wish to. And in doing so, they create an intimate relationship that says, I can do these kinds of things. But not only can I do them, but I notice them for myself. I am aware of the fact that I have the power to do something for my environment. That it is not my job. It is actually something of immense value for me personally, because I love doing it, but for the environment and the future. So, as you can see, I'm pulling a little bit for a rebalance of our understanding and responsibilities towards these kinds of activities for our children in the environment. These activities help the child to think for themselves, but not just to think for themselves, but to act on their thoughts and to gain feedback. This brings me direct knowledge of my surroundings. Knowledge of myself and what I can do will build my self-confidence. I suddenly feel that I'm a valuable member of this community, a valuable member of my home, a valuable member of my peer group. I am not relying on the understanding of others to tell me what I am or I am not. I know because I experience, and I am directly connected with the feedback that tells me who I am and what I can do. Now, whilst these activities are chosen from life, they are designed and shown rather differently. They're designed to respond to the child's urge to perfect themselves into the adult that they wish to become. We don't show them what to do. Actually, they already know that. We show them how to do something. And that is a very different perspective. Because if you're simply going to show someone what to do, you're simply repeating what they have seen over and over again, in any case, in their environment at home. What you need to be able to do is to show them something much more special. You are saying to them, I believe you can do this. I think you're capable. And if I show you, in a way that lets you see how it was achieved, you too will be able to take that knowledge inside of you and bring it out in your own way and be active upon those materials and those things. Again, Montessori said, instead of carrying out the natural everyday actions of life without thinking or in an imperfect way, we believe that to do them attentively, conscientiously, carefully, and as perfectly as possible is the first step on the path to perfecting the adult. This is the child's natural expression of life, his way of acting and living. And if we begin to look at the child in this way, we see that every action they carry out is an action that wishes to bring them further down the path of self-development. Now, all of the activities are connected with movement, because movement is not an action of the body, but of the mind. It is the mind that controls the muscles. It is the mind that directs the body to act. But it is the body that gives the mind feedback. And this virtuous circle is created. I think, I act, I know more because I have acted, and so now I think more and I act more. And in that virtuous circle of practice, little by little, my abilities improve. My goals change. To begin with, as a small child, all I want to do is not spill the beans in the jug as I put them from one to another, or the water, or whatever. I just don't want to spill them. And that's enough for me. But actually, once I don't even think about whether I'm going to spill them or not, because I can do it, so I'm not thinking now. I now try to see if I can do exactly the amount I need, and not more or less. And all over again, I'm engaged in a path of self-discovery, self-achievement, and a new goal. And so we see then that in this effort not to spill the water, in this effort to do up my button where I practice, something else is involved. Not just movement, not just the intellect that is guiding it, but actually an effort of will. I am not going to give up. This is something I feel I can achieve. And in going back and trying again and again and again, we see that the child develops through repetition, through wanting to achieve a goal, the ability to persevere. Now, I like to ask you if you don't think that the character who can persevere has an advantage over the one that gives up at the sign of any difficulty. And so, an apparently simple little thing, like learning to do your buttons or pour some water, begins to reveal to us that it is multi-layered and multi-leveled, that it is flexible enough to adapt itself to the ability of the child and can increasingly become more challenging, and allow the child the possibility of not only developing for themselves the capacity to persevere, but also the idea that actually it's quite fun. That I liked the feeling I got when, after a lot of trial and struggles, I achieved something. In fact, I want to try something else that's a bit more difficult. I'm not put off. I like that feeling. And so we see that the child, in solving those difficulties, uses their intellect to face a challenge, to find their way through, to overcome something, not to give up. The intelligence is put to use in learning to identify and overcome difficulties. And I ask you, don't you think that's rather good to have in your character for life? These activities, these errors and mistakes that occur as I try and I struggle, and as you, as the teacher, sit on your hands, waiting for the moment when you will give the right help, not any help, but the right help. These moments are also positive because the message you give the child is, first of all, that no one really ever manages anything the first time round anyway. And secondly, it doesn't make a jot of difference how many times you need to do something. The journey is more important than the result. And so we see that there is nothing negative in our holding environment, nothing negative. There is no mistake as such. There is simply an offer of positive action. Oh, that water is still spilling? Here's an idea. Can you think of anything you might do? Try it. At no point in any Montessori environment is a child told, oh, you've made me sad by not doing that. The emotional blackmail of the negative positive. At no point is the child seen to be punished for something that is simply a matter of development. There are no mistakes, only a journey to be made, and positive action to put things right. Now, can I ask you, do you feel that a person who is not afraid of making mistakes has something very powerful within them? And if that person is not afraid of making mistakes, but also knows that they will, and also knows that they can work it through, maybe we have something positive going in that little button frame and that tiny little jug, or the sweeping that's going on outside. In fact, Montessori children are very lucky because they do get a reward for achieving something. The reward is to have achieved it. And it doesn't come from anything that you say. It comes only from the fact of the matter. Now, the fact of the matter is much more powerful, let me tell you. Because how often have you said to someone, oh no, you'll be all right, don't worry, you're going to be okay. And they say, yeah. Do they feel it? No, they don't. Because the fact is what counts. Am I or am I not capable? It's not what somebody else tells me I'm able to do that changes how I feel about myself. It's what I'm able to do that changes how I feel about myself. It's what I can achieve. And if I can achieve things, then I begin to see that my reward for achieving something is to look for something that's harder. Now, very often in the traditional movements, but I hope not in ours, the reward for hard work is a rest. Oh, don't do anything more now. You go and rest, you must be tired. Bored and fatigued when they are unchallenged, when everything is too simple, when there is nothing for them to take on board and meet and overcome. So boredom and fatigue don't come from overwork. You know that as well as I do. When you're working and things are going well and people say to you, my goodness, you must be really exhausted, you say, well, I haven't had time to think about that. I feel fine, actually. Now, you may need to put yourself to bed for 24 hours a week later, but you can do that because that's your choice. So, what do we give the child if we don't give them rewards and punishment? How on earth will children work just because it's there? That's not possible, is it? Children only learn. You know, children must be like donkeys. That's it. I've got it. They must be. A carrot to make you go, and a stick if you're not doing the right thing. Even donkeys defy that. So, through practice, what was once a challenge becomes something simply lived and carried out, without effort, without thought. The activity, if it is to really mean something to the child, is chosen by the child. I choose, I do the work, I repeat, I persevere. Hey, I'm successful. I'm not earning $1 million. That's not the kind of success I'm talking about. I'm successful as a human being. I'm able to live in this world well. And while this is all happening, I'm beginning to make a lot of judgments. How fast, how often, when, can I help? Can I use my skill? Is that something that someone can do with some help for? Is this the situation when I can put this into practice? Judgment, judgment, judgment. I make a judgment and I act. Was my judgment right or wrong? I won't know until I've acted. And I judge again and I judge again. How often do we have people who don't use their judgment? Because they haven't had enough practice at making judgments and acting on them. They may make judgments, but they don't act on them, so they're very safe. The person who never makes a mistake really isn't trying very hard to live a life. How can you go beyond yourself and never make a mistake? It's not possible. So if you are one of those people in this audience who never makes a mistake, half-life people, half-life, right? Go out immediately and make some kind of a mistake because you are then beginning to grow. So I can do, I am able, I am capable. I have self-esteem. And isn't that a word we hear all the time, rather wrongly these days? Oh, you must do this for somebody else's self-esteem. No one can do anything for somebody else's self-esteem. I can only do it for myself. And so, from a position of strength and a sense of self-worth, I am more able to affirm and trust in others, because first we need to trust ourselves before we can begin to trust others. Montessori said, peaceful people live in peace. Trust myself, trust others. Interesting. Don't feel as if something's going to be taken away from me any minute. Don't feel I have to fight my corner. A simple thing like being able to do things gives me trust in myself, and that of itself might help me to live more peacefully with others. It's not possible, is it really? Cloud cuckoo land. So, what else? The things that we show differently for a particular reason. We analyze our movements. That is not to say we become puppets, by the way. Right? We make beautiful, beautiful movements out of our own bodies. So when I do something in front of the child, I am showing them that at this particular moment, I have these particular abilities over my own body. And if, when you sit in front of the child and you are showing them something and it's the same old boring thing, and you're right-handed, do it with your left and start to experience something a little different. If you're left-handed, do it with your right. If you've tied the bows in the same way for the last 20 years, have a go at something different. Put yourself into the situation where you are showing something to the child that is so beautifully choreographed that they get the meaning of the dance. and try in their own way to interpret it. Not your way. It's your body, right? It's your body. It's not theirs. In their way, because that's their body. So, although these activities look as if they're difficult to explain to parents, they're ever so boring to do, we'd much rather be doing the language and maths, actually, they are teaching the children to teach themselves how to grow as a human being. They are giving them the power to act for themselves, not inside your children's house, but in the world. If I hear one more time, or you give the children the practical life activities so they can build the pink tower, well, I think I will expire. The activities can only be for life, practical life, living. Living is what I do, and most of it I don't do inside your children's house. So these activities give the child power, and they open up, each one opens up a multitude of paths for the child to follow. Because in my mind, if my body can do whatever I ask it to do, I have limitless possibilities. And the better I can do it, the more likely I am to go on and explore what interests me, what I am good at, what I have discovered, what I have found, what I'm exploring. So these activities then build the child's character, develop their intellect. But more than anything, well, not more than anything, as well as, they create human beings that are attached and as a consequence in love with their environment. And in this day and age, it is very important that our children are in love with their environment. But that is not all. I'm sure you thought, gosh, is that all? Sorry, still going on. If you need to move, you can, but I'm carrying on. They also help the child in social development. I've talked a lot about the individual, but the activities reflect the social customs, the habits, the various artifacts of the environment that I live in. The children, in acting for themselves, develop a sense of responsibility towards their environment because they have the possibility of maintaining not just the physical order, but the social order. Can I help you? Do you need to know how to do that? Oh, well, we don't actually do that here, you know. These things are very important. The activities, and particularly those of grace and courtesy, and I love the word grace and courtesy. People say, oh, they say old-fashioned, call it social relations. I'm not. I'm calling it grace because I think the human being is a graceful entity. And courtesy, because without courtesy, our social environments fall to pieces. And so the grace and courtesy that we offer the children, once a week, is it? Rolling a mat by any chance? The grace and courtesy which must come from the living of the child should be done at every possible moment. And most importantly, as you know what I'm going to say, don't you? Most importantly, by you. Oh, don't shout at that person. 2 minutes earlier you were saying, what do you think you're doing, putting those beads down the toilet again? We model, because the moment we don't model, our relationship changes. The child thinks, here is someone who does not do what they say, who doesn't in fact believe what they say. Now, as a child, am I going to do what they say, or am I going to follow what they do? Follow what they do, of course. So grace and courtesy. The other wonderful thing about the activities is that without even trying, the child engages in an interdependence with other children. I like washing cups. You know, a couple of children, usually the same two, isn't it? Sleeves rolled up, good old natter, washing up the cups. But someone else is drying. Someone else drank out of them. I like folding and ironing, but somebody else used it, someone else washed it, someone else collected it from the drying. And so collaboratively, collectively, the children begin to see that together, something that could take a very long time actually is lighter and more enjoyed. And because we find that the ages of the children are mixed, each child realizes that they experience what it is like to be free as them within the environment. This is who I am, and I am free to act in accordance with my needs. But that person over there, they have to be them. And I need to know how to get along with them. So I experience that I'm allowed to be free, therefore I need to give that freedom also to others. If I can be who I want to be, within limits, you understand, then they can be who they can be, within limits. And the limits are very few. Don't hurt people, look after things, be kind. So there's a lack of competition, a taking care of shared resources, the capacity to help one another. The children are encouraged towards greater acts of self-expression. And eventually they begin to appreciate the efforts of others, to learn not to be critical when someone isn't quite doing what you thought they ought to be, and to learn that they always have a choice as to whether they participate or they just watch. Through the movements, through the actions, little by little, I achieve control over myself. And in that control, I feel powerful. Because the more control I have over myself, the less control others can have over me. Because if I can control myself without needing the control of others, I truly am free to walk, to act and be myself. So learning through doing, with the adult firstly illuminating the way, then standing back, ready to help when needed, and finally being unnecessary. You have to be ready for that in yourself. Sometimes we find it difficult to be unnecessary. We need to be needed, to feel that we have a job. For the directress who sits and watches all day long, actually she's the one who's really achieved the most. Because if she is able, or he is able, to sit at the side of the room while everything else carries on in the normal way, that is when you have really achieved the task that you set out to do. And I'd like to show you now, because we've been told we have to do practical things too, I'd like to show you now a DVD. Remember that Montessori said this is not the Montessori method, it's the child's method. So anything we do should really find its reflection in the outside world. What we do shouldn't be unusual. What we do should be something that is spontaneous and natural. And I'm going to show you a DVD by a Professor Assal from Geneva, Switzerland. He is a medical professor, and apart from being a specialist in diabetes, he believes very strongly that if you pass over the care of an illness to the patient, they manage their illness better, and the doctor is more successful at the end of the day. And he came across Montessori, and he liked it, and he incorporated the principles into his teaching methods for helping doctors understand how to get patients to manage their illnesses. And I'm indebted to Odette Kutelik, who managed to track this DVD down for me, and I think she's here somewhere, so thank you, Odette. You can take it back with you, actually. because he simply went to Italy. And since Italy is the birthplace of Montessori, I thought you'd like to see this DVD.
Gone unnoticed. Its gondolier was a young man who was learning this age-old profession passed down from father to son in the same manner as during the Renaissance. As I watched and listened, I quickly realized that I was witnessing a perfect educational approach. It could be used to illustrate the majority of recommendations for the education of patients to allow them to manage their often complex treatment day after day. A gondola is a somewhat curious craft, a 15-meter-long, narrow, flat-bottomed boat that is asymmetrical and slightly curved, resembling a floating banana. This curious shape has been developed to ensure that only a minimum amount of effort is required to propel the boat through the water. When laden with an 800-kilo load, the gondolier needs to provide the same amount of energy to move forward as he would require to carry a 15-kilo load on foot, but on one condition: that he acquires the complex knowledge of maneuvering. It takes years to thoroughly understand a gondola. That is to say, to steer in a manner which is almost but not quite technically perfect. Learning is the result of navigating through this obstacle course. The gondolier begins to learn his occupation like a child with traditional Venetian boats. Then he must start to learn to master the posture necessary to hold the oar in his hand and to achieve the proper motion of the wrist. These are the basic requirements for the gondolier. Then there is the position of the gondolier's entire body in the boat. This has to be perfectly well managed, thrusting his weight slightly forward or slightly backwards to steer the craft and counterbalancing the gondola by standing on one side or the other. Steering a gondola is an almost impossible task, and so mastering the course is a difficult undertaking. You have to realize that for the gondolier, steering a 15-meter-long boat whilst remaining in an off-center position means turning it with an accuracy of 1 or 2 centimeters in these narrow canals. Being able to do so provides an immense feeling of satisfaction, but learning the gondolier's profession is extremely difficult, since in the early stages of training it is almost impossible to steer. The trainee does not have sufficient control. However, when he acquires it, that is, when the gondola and gondolier act in unison, with the gondolier's legs sensing the motion of the gondola, feeling that the man and the boat are one. This means that the gondolier understands that he controls his boat. This provides tremendous satisfaction.
Lento, tranquillo, e guarda avanti.
Go ahead carefully.
Piano e guarda avanti.
Look ahead.
Attento alla testa.
Watch your head. Lower,
Giù, giù,
lower.
giù.
Still lower. That's it.
Ecco, adesso alza gli occhi.
Now lift up your head and look
avanti.
out into the distance.
Saper soprattutto mostrare praticamente.
It's not easy to know how to show what has to be done in practice. That is, noticing the expert movement of the oar and how to perform those motions properly with the movement of the gondola. Also to make him aware of this using the young gondolier's own hands, piloting it at the beginning and then having him try out the gondola all by himself while giving him advice. The trainee practices and the master thinks. Rowing together is a method of learning this complex movement with the oar. Let's say, as long as the teacher stays behind his student, this position provides a certain sense of security. The young trainee knows that someone is always ready to intervene immediately at any time and to take over the boat. But later, when you stand in front of the young trainee, this means that you have confidence in him and that it is up to him to incorporate all of the movements he has learned.
Ma credo...
Apart from the gondolier's advice, I think that the most important thing is not to make sharp, sudden course corrections unless absolutely necessary. It takes several years to be able to steer a gondola
non
properly.
riprendere, diciamo, in maniera forte.
It is also because the gondolier finds himself in different and often dangerous situations. For example, there's always the possibility of a collision with another boat.
Si trova sempre in situazioni diverse.
Often this is not the gondolier's fault, since other gondoliers may not be able to properly steer their gondola. Such situations occur every day, and each time the corrective action taken is different. This implies that, as a result, the more training you receive, the more experience you get, the better you steer the gondola. But of course it takes time.
Gestisci la cosa dopo.
Holding the oar properly is a basic skill. This involves positioning your hands correctly. And also, there is the control of the length of oar used, which can be reduced or increased. For example, in a narrow canal, you have to pull in the oar. Here are all of the little movements that one makes with the wrists when you wish to refine piloting the gondola. To do this takes much experience, because in the beginning, such sensitivity does not come spontaneously. For example, plunging the oar too deep when the sea is rough. In fact, you need skillful legs, the ability to counterbalance the boat, to take a wave and successfully pass through it, with one foot behind and the other foot in front, so as to form a triangle, to manage to keep the gondola's balance, using your weight. Such flexibility is basic. If you drop the oar into the water, you fall. Once again, your position is vital. When you find this flexible position, everything becomes easier.
Trovata la posizione, poi tutto viene più facile.
He knows how to steer the gondola pretty well in a difficult setting. But it's very important that he's already learning to have flexibility in his legs. I think that soon he'll become a good gondolier. We've been able to observe this fine example.
The rest is just, sorry. The last few words are just about patients, so I didn't think you'd need to hear about how patients manage their illnesses. But I would like to ask you for a moment to help me, because the one thing that we haven't mentioned is that when the children are at their busiest, when they are their most involved, when their attention has gone, and yours has, to the screen, when their attention has gone to something in particular, there is a focus, there is a peacefulness. In fact, contrary to expectation, when children are really busy, there is a quietness about what they do, because they are focused and because their attention is somewhere. And because that quietness can lead to a sense of peacefulness, it is paradoxical that in the youngest of environments, we often get moments of pure and blissful peace, when everyone is quiet. And children love peace, and they love silence, and they love making silence, whether they're making it because they're working and very busy, or whether they're making it because they're choosing to make it. And so part of our practical life activities also include the idea of silence. And I wondered if you would do me the honor of making a silence with me. The thing about making a silence is that it requires acceptance and participation. So I have to ask you, would you like to rise to the challenge and see if we, as adults, can have the control over our own bodies, the ultimate control, which is not control as we move, but control for a moment to not move. And if we can, I would like us all together to try and make a silence, which, as you will know, will include the sounds of life around us, because we have no control over anything other than ourselves. And so if you wouldn't mind getting yourselves comfortable, making absolutely sure that your mobile phones are really turned off, knowing that if you need to move, of course you may move, but you move knowing that you try not to make a sound to disturb the other person. If you need to close your eyes, you close your eyes. If you need to leave them open, you leave them open. You are simply who you are. And let's see if 500 people can make a silence together. Shall we try? Okay. Sadhana, the mind and body coming together to perform complex, multi-level tasks, initially with awareness, but eventually lived and carried out without effort. Mindful action, conscious practice within and without, effective communication through example, a caring demonstration, good work done well with internal guidance, inner and outer accomplishment, a quest for perfection, an act of self-mastery, achievement through self-control, being in the moment, touching the human spirit, a disciplined state of inner harmony. Namaste.
Thank you, Lynn. Please accept a small token on our behalf. We now have a tea break. I invite you to go out, explore, find a cup of tea, look at the exhibitions, come back in and find your seats by 10 minutes past 11. Thank you.